Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk, if you're new here, um, look at me starting without an introduction as if I'm famous and everybody knows me. I am Cherono. Oh, I am Cherono, and I would say that I have been in the US. If I round it up, I would say I've been in the US for about 2 years now. I recently immigrated from Kenya, and this channel is going to be I'll be sharing something that is very personal and very close to my heart, and that is how I landed my first corporate job in America. I was very physically, mentally prepared to find anything because I knew you are starting afresh and your experience might not really matter in a new country. But then, yeah, so like I'll just share my whole experience. So if this is something that you might be interested in, then, or it might be an encouragement to you, then you should stick around and hear my story. Okay, so first things first, like even coming just to the United States, I would say that it was such a process. First of all, just even getting here. If you've watched my past videos, you would see I have like talked about like some of my experiences like getting into the United States. But then even once you're here, like it's a continuous process of getting approvals. It's like you have to jump like through so many hoops to get the stuff. And by stuff I mean like you need to get your paperwork ready and available and legal and approved. And so I think just to talk briefly about it, like once you get into the United States, so once I got in here, for me to be legally allowed to work, I needed to get my work permit, or what we call work authorization. So that's another process that we had to wait upon and for it to be approved. And then eventually that was approved. So I was able to get my work authorization approved. And then once you get your work authorization, you're given a social security card. And then once you get your social security card, you can you can start doing things. Once you have a social security number, I feel like that is like an opening to you for you to be able to start get things going. And so I think for me, I would say that was like the first thing. So I would say, first of all, I would want to give all the honor and the glory to God because He made everything happen for me. And so because of Him and He's doing His miracles and how He made things happen, I was able to get my work permit approved. I was able to get my social security card approved. And then I think the big one, which is like, I think the biggest milestone I would say would be getting my green card. Like with a green card, you basically can do everything that a citizen can do, except for a few things like voting. Like I'm not allowed to vote, and other things. But I think outside of that, like if it's working, making or doing investments, basically I am allowed to do that. So I think for me, getting my green card was like the first, like eventually, I felt like now I can do stuff. But once I got my work authorization, because it came before my green card, once I got my work authorization granted, I started applying for jobs. And I think looking at or learning or hearing from people's stories, you are basically prepared to do anything. So for me, I wasn't particularly picky, but then I wasn't shying away from putting myself out there. And what I mean is that my first goal or my primary goal in other ways was for me to get like a corporate job. So I think my goal was like, hey, I'm going to look for corporate jobs that are in line with my experiences back in Kenya, which is a completely different system like you. So I was gonna be like, I'm gonna look for other jobs that are aligned to my experience, to my just my experience, things that I've done. And if it was going to take forever for me to get something, I needed to earn money. Like I wasn't going to just stay at home and just not do stuff. And so I was like, if it wasn't going to work out, then I was going to be open to working in McDonald's or like anywhere that isn't like corporate, like in a factory, in a production setting. Yeah, so what I would say is that the first thing that I did before I got even my work authorization, I was researching some of the things that I was going to I was going to easily transition into, like things that would have transferable skills based off of my experience in Kenya. And so I used to do a lot of research. Like I did a lot of research and I learned that I was going to mainly, okay, I'm outside this noise. Okay, the car's gone. But yeah, so I learned that I was going to probably do administrative work or customer care roles, like office setting, something that is like administrative or a clerk, because I had a good knowledge of computers. I had worked with customers. Like I was going to be able to work with people, but not something like it's also not so complex that would need my understanding of American systems that was going to make it difficult for me to be able to do my role. So that's how I looked at my initial job searching or my initial job prospects. Yeah. So once I got all the approvals done, I knew I had like a list of things a list of jobs that I was going to start applying for. And so I was on LinkedIn, I was on what's other things, like all these job sites. LinkedIn, what's this other one that we call? What's the name? What am I forgetting? But all the job sites. I was in all the job sites. I was looking for jobs. And we briefly lived in a different state. So once I got in fact, if anything, my things were approved after I had relocated to a new state. And so in this new, I got my work permit when I was still in Michigan. So I was able to apply for a few jobs while I was still there. But then I was able to get my green card still there. Yeah, I think I got everything while I was still in Michigan. And then when we moved to Wisconsin, I did have all my paperwork, like almost like my green card was actually approved. Just before we came to Wisconsin. I hope I'm getting my timelines correct. But once we got here, I started applying for so many jobs. Like I said, like all the administrative, all the customer service, customer experience, project support, program support, like anything related to projects that I could work in. I did apply because I have experience there. I also applied just anything like was customer focused or programs focused or projects focused. I applied in all of them. And I remembered like if you're new in a country, one of the things that is going to be like, especially for example, if you're coming into a new country with a new system, for me, I think one of the things that I had to struggle with was my accent. Like I have a different accent. And I was afraid that was going to actually act as a barrier for me to getting employment. And so I was very conscious about it, and that made me feel like I'm not deserving or I'm not qualified, if that makes any sense. It's like you're competing with people who've grown up in this country, and you are like actually saying that you can see my babies walking around in the house. But yeah, it's like you're applying for jobs and competing with people who've grown in the system, and then you speak differently, and then you have experience from another country. If anything, I would say it's a very interesting experience for me. Yeah. And I think the major issue about it is that the first thing that you are like, are they able to understand you? I think with the accent thing, I think one of my biggest fear was, are they going to understand me? Because sometimes I had interacted with people who I felt like it's like they didn't understand my English. Because if you've come from a different country where you spoke a different English, my English was British English, and how we pronounced and even spelled certain words was so different. And that for me was like it kind of held me back a lot. Yeah. So one of the few days, because I would wake up in the morning and I would just apply for so many jobs I applied. I forgot how many jobs I had applied to. But then one random day, guess what? A recruiter like reached out to me, and then she was like, "Hey, I have seen that you have applied for this job." And so she asked me questions about my experience. She asked me questions about my previous experience, like everything I had outlined in my resume. So I was like, yes, I've done that, I've done this, I've done that, and like how that was going to be linked to the job I had applied for. But at this time when she was speaking to me, it had not hit me which job I had applied for, because I had applied for so many jobs. But I was just waiting for her to just, for her to kind of reveal which position she was actually referring to. And so after she was like done talking about my experience, she was like, okay. So she kind of got the sense that I had what they were looking for. And then she asked so randomly out of nowhere, you indicated that you speak Swahili. I'm like, okay. In my head, I'm thinking, did I indicate that because I think I had updated my resume. And in my head, I was like thinking, I don't think Swahili is going to be a relevant language in America, But I think now this is how you see how it's God. Because I don't even remember. Apparently, I left out the part that I actually speak in Swahili. Because it's apart for languages, and you list all the languages that you speak. I left Swahili there. And I was like, yes, I speak in Swahili, like I understand Swahili. And she was like, how good is your Swahili? I'm like, I am from Kenya. So if you're from Kenya, like Swahili, we call it lugha ya taifa, which is like our national language. We have English. We speak in English, which is our official. We call it like the official language, but Swahili is like our national language. And then everybody now speaks their own individual tribal language. And then we have Sheng. We have our own slang where we mix English Swahili or even mix slang in Swahili. But I'm like, yeah, like if anything, that's like my native language. um, and I'm like, wow, in my head, I'm thinking, wow, did they leave that out? Like I speak in Swahili, like how is, okay. So I allowed her to continue talking and she's like, okay, so if you speak in Swahili, if anything, we were looking for, there's another position that you're actually qualified for. So what's going to happen is that I'm going to send you a link. I will send you a link, apply on that link. And once you're done, let me know. If anything, that job actually even pays like better. Like, okay, it pays better. And I was, I was very like desperate for a job. So after we hang up immediately, I went into that link that she had shared with me. I applied for that job. And then I gave her the notification. I sent her an update like, hey, I've applied for this job. And she immediately was able to be like, hey, okay, fine. I'm going to share your report, like your resume with the team. And then, yeah, are you open, like we're proceeding with an interview. And so she was able to give me like an interview date. But hanging up that phone call and I was telling my husband, hey, looks like I have an interview for like a real job. And I think everything just happened so fast. And here, like I would say, it's everything, like God's working and doing his fingerprints all over everything that was happening. Because remember, for me, I was very conscious that being a Kenyan, being an immigrant, and then speaking differently. And I speak differently because I speak several languages. Like if you're coming from a different country, you're like a bare minimum, you're a bilingual. And because of that, like you definitely have an accent. And I was beating myself up because of my Swahili, like and my English is not American, like but you see how God works. He thinks how he does his things. It's just so different. Anyway, the interview date is set, and so here I am. I'm preparing. I prepared for that interview. I researched the company. I researched the roles. I researched how that is related to things that I have done in the past. Like for me, I came prepared. So in this interview, they set up with somebody who was going to be my manager and my colleague. It's like a specific department that deals with a specific group of people. And so I was going to be working with them. And so they made it so that they're the ones who were going to interview me. And so in that interview, it was virtual. I remember just logging into my computer. And then, the other interviewer came in later. But so the lady who eventually ended up even being my manager, she's the one who was like leading the interview. She's the main interviewer, and she was like asking me questions. And so I remember I was very nervous because first of all, I'm like, they'll discover I'm a fraud. I speak differently, and they will discover that maybe I need more American experience. I don't know. Like I was very anxious, and so she would ask me a question, and here is where I would say, like, you just go there prepared. Like I was very prepared. And she'd ask me the first question and I would give my answer. And then after I answered my first question, she'd be like, wow, your answer has answered my 2 or 3 next questions. I'm like, okay. In my head, I'm like, okay, I think it's going on well. And then she would ask me the next question and then I would answer it. And she's like, oh, wow, that's a very good answer. If anything, you've actually answered the next question that I was going to answer. So it's like that interview ended up being so short because my answers were actually like, I would like elaborate in my answers. I would be like, hey, and then I would give real life scenarios. Like if you've done a job and you are applying for something that is closely related and they ask you a question about it, you're like, yeah, and I would tie it to like previously when this happened to my previous role, this is what happened, this was a scenario, and this is how I was able to mitigate it, or this was my solution, and this is how we were able to come up with a solution. And she was like very impressed. Yeah, and eventually the other interviewer came in, and so I think for him, he was mostly interested in he asked me questions around like, are you comfortable working with people from other nationals? I'm like, if you know me, I worked in a company that was working with people from different countries. First of all, Kenya, we are very diverse, and then number 2, I worked in a company where we were like dealing with different nationalities. Like we were in Kenya, we had some people in Nepal, we had some people in the UK. It was a US based company. We had some people from Ghana. Like I would say, yeah, like I was able to work in a team that was extremely diverse in terms of countries, which was very true. And then, so he was very pleased. And then he specifically now went to the Swahili bit, which I think for them was like the language of contention. So he was like, and so which country are you originally from? I think he wanted to see my Swahili, like how good it is. I'm like, I'm from Kenya. And I think once I just said I'm from Kenya, in his head, I think he was like, yeah, Kenya, I know Kenya, they speak Swahili. And for him, that made him very relaxed and very comfortable. Because later on, when I started doing my role, I knew we were working with people, especially from Swahili countries like Congo, like some of East African countries. And I understood why they wanted someone who speaks Swahili. and so I think now this brings back to the theme of my video. Like, I was very self-conscious about myself and my experience and my capabilities in terms of how I was going to add value being new in a country and looking for like employment in a new country. And it's like how God works. Nothing is ever a mistake. Like, it's like who you are and all your experiences and everything that you have, He will use that to provide, to help sustain you. You know what I mean? So the thing that I felt was going to hold me back was actually the thing that God used to open doors for me. So I don't know if anybody is feeling, if you're new in a new country and you're trying to find something for yourself, first of all, don't accept who you are, accept your history, accept your background, accept who you are first, because that in itself is what you got. And then be very confident in executing what you are capable of doing. Don't let your accent or don't let the thing that makes you different be the thing that will prevent you. If anything, the thing that makes you different might be exactly what they're looking for. And if you're determined, if you're hardworking, if you're open to learning, and I think those are things that I learned being in corporate America. You're like somebody who is open to learning, somebody who's open to feedback. You're like, I might not know exactly how to do task X, but I'm very open to learning and I'm open to feedback. And if I make a mistake, I'm open to making, learning and making adjustments to fit the policy, to fit the requirements of that agency. So I think for me, that's how I landed my first corporate job. After that interview, I remember that lady was very impressed. She was like, I'm so happy with your responses. She didn't hide that she was impressed with me. And she said, hey, we still have other people that we're interviewing. I think it was sometime early. It wasn't like around Friday. It was like early days of the week. So she was like, we're still interviewing other people, but you should be able to hear from us like within a week. And sure enough, within a week, I was able to get the feedback from like the recruiter who reached out to me. She was like, hey, they were so happy and they were so impressed with you, and they were like, we would like to give you an offer. If anything, the pay was was better, not even slightly, was like way better than what I had initially applied for. And who I am, where I'm from, and the languages that I speak and my experience was exactly what they needed. So don't hold yourself back. And I think that's how I landed my first corporate job in America. So I think, like I said, just to summarize, like I had even to write this down. Don't hide who you are. Don't be ashamed of your accent or your story. And God will use everything about you, even the things you don't like about yourself, to set you apart. Put that on my t-shirts. And I'll say that again. God will use everything about you, even the things you don't like, even the things you don't like about yourself, to set you apart. So like who you are is not by chance. And there's a lot of purpose in your story. And I think today is sometime in October. So this job that I got, now I have another new job, and it was based off of my experience in my other old job. This other job that I just told you about, the one that I got, it's because of my experience and how I conducted myself and everything. I don't even know how I conduct myself. First of all, because of God allowing me to conduct myself in a certain way and giving me the wisdom and the grace to to accomplish everything that I needed to do. It opened up another door in a different company. So right now, I would say I am still on probation. So I cannot say like I have this new job. I think we always count our eggs once they fully hatch. So once I'm out of probation in this current new job, I will be able to like speak more openly about it. So stay tuned. So if this story was a bit of an encouragement to you, you can like it, and you can also share it with somebody whom you feel like it's going to be an encouragement to them. I think one thing that I've learned about corporate or finding a job in a new country, it's like your story is going to be your story at the end of the day. As much as this is my story, it's not going to be someone else's story. Like I feel like maybe someone else might have had a much better experience, and someone else might have had a much worse experience. Like your story is just your story, and don't take someone else's like negative side of the story to prevent you from putting yourself out there. Dream big. Like the world is your oyster. You can actually be anything, or you can be able to accomplish anything that you set yourself to be, because you have your purpose. And I think I've learned with like how working with God is that it's always between the two of you, and what the two of you, what God will allow you to do in a certain capacity or in the world. Like just have your own path and dream big. Don't limit yourself. Put yourself out there, because your scariest dream can actually come true. So once I have more updates or something to say about my current job or just navigating corporate America, I think that's something that I'll talk about, because it's quite something, like navigating corporate America as an immigrant, or just navigating a corporate lifestyle in a new country. It's something that no one can ever teach you. It's something that you have to learn from mistakes. You have to learn from going through negative experiences. It's something that you have to go through by yourself. And if I can share my experience and make it easier for someone else, then I guess you will stay tuned, and I will be here to share as much as I can. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.